Hello, good morning, and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. Let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper. These are the topics that we shall be discussing today, 14 in total. But before we start, if you are a working professional and you are considering resigning from your job because you want to prepare for the civil services examination full-time, I urge you not to resign or consider delaying your decision by a few days, because on Saturday at 8 p.m. we are organizing a workshop specifically focusing on the working professionals, where I will present a detailed strategy which a working professional should follow to crack the civil services examination, so that you don't have to quit, you don't have to resign from your job. So please delay the decision, if you have made one, of resigning from your job by a few days. And after attending the session, if you still want to go ahead and resign, I will not stop you. Please register for this workshop. The link is provided in the video description. Let's get started and look at topic number 1. Election Commission has issued notices to 2 political leaders for violating Model Code of Conduct. Particularly, these comments were misogynist against women. And there is also an editorial in today's international edition of the Hindu newspaper titled Toxic Words. The year was 2012. T20 Cricket World Cup was ongoing. India exited early from the World Cup campaign. Pakistan, on the other hand, went on to play Sri Lanka in the semi-finals and was defeated. Then a tweet was made by Indian cricketer Suresh Raina, which many people argued was distasteful. Suresh Raina said, "My nephew tweeted this, so my nephew did this." The comment made by Congress politician Ms. Shrinate against the Mandi Lok Sabha constituency candidate of the BJP, actor Kangana Ranaut, it was considered to be distasteful, misogynist, but she said that many people have access to my Facebook accounts and Instagram accounts, so I did not do it, someone else did this. So this was Suresh Raina's nephew did this movement for the Congress politician. But be that as it may, what is the larger question that we need to address from this controversy? And that is of Model Code of Conduct. What is the purpose of Model Code of Conduct? The real objective of Model Code of Conduct is to ensure a level playing field. The year was 1960, when Kerala state administration took an initiative. All the political parties contesting elections in Kerala decided to come together and observe a code. And what was that code? That code came to be known as later Model Code of Conduct. Because when the rallies, processions were organized by political parties, the opposition would disrupt these rallies or these processions, which means you are unable to campaign for your elections, you are unable to communicate your ideology and manifesto to the voters, which basically disrupts the electioneering. All the political parties in Kerala decided to come together and observe this code that we will not disrupt each other's rallies. Significant curbs were imposed on governments, that government should not announce new policies, new schemes at the time of the elections, because otherwise it will corrupt the voters, it will corrupt the minds of the voters, it would disturb the level playing field. That is how later Election Commission, just before 1962 elections, issued an advisory to all the political parties that you should observe a code. Curiously, 3 state governments, Kerala, Tamil Nadu and West Bengal, they decided to come together and they decided to implement, all the political parties decided to implement this code. In fact, in Tamil Nadu, there was a committee of 7 members belonging to 7 different political parties, which had the responsibility of ensuring that every political party, every candidate is following that code. But then this model code of conduct started getting implemented from 1979, but in its current form, it was amplified in the year 1991, and that is thanks to the legendary Chief Election Commissioner T.N. Seshan. One important provision of this model code of conduct is that if you want to attack each other, attack political parties based on their policies, programs, ideology, don't attack each other's personalities. Don't hate below the belt. And these comments made by political leaders, which are misogynist in nature, which affect the personal lives of politicians, that is something which is against the model code of conduct. But the fact is, model code of conduct is not backed by any law. That means there are no penal provisions which provide for a model code of conduct. But then there are various constitutional experts who say even if there is no statutory backing to model code of conduct, it has now become a moral code of conduct. Moral code of conduct how? The moment notice is issued by the Election Commission, it elicits immediate response by those who have violated model code of conduct. So you would see that if the notice has been issued to these political leaders, asking them for their response, for their reply by the evening of March 29, you will definitely see a reply by these political leaders. That speaks volumes about the command of the model code of conduct as implemented by the Election Commission of India. But we have seen instances where sometimes Election Commission has gone too hard and sometimes too soft on model code of conduct violations. Now listen to me carefully. What is the issue that we are debating? We are debating some misogynist comments made by political leaders about candidates, women candidates contesting elections. When the comments were made against Ms. Kangana Ranaut, netizens, they unearthed an old video of the actor wherein she was criticizing another actor, Ms. Urmila Matondkar, for participating in the elections by calling her a soft porn star. So everybody is guilty in these misogynist comments. But what we are discussing here is the violation of model code of conduct, which no law is backing. It does not have a statutory backing. But model code of conduct has now become a moral code of conduct because the moment notice is issued by the Election Commission to those who violate model code of conduct, you see the immediate response, immediate reply by the violators. That speaks volumes about the way in which the Election Commission of India is implementing model code of conduct. But sometimes Election Commission is going too hard, sometimes too soft on the violations of model code of conduct. For example, speeches. A politician may have a gift of gab. He may pepper his speeches with some quotes or may criticize an opponent by calling him or her names. We should not use model code of conduct for sanitizing such speeches. Because election is a public spectacle. We want people to attend the rallies of the politicians. And if you sanitize these speeches, public will not attend these rallies because as a politician, my rallies would be attended by large number of people because people want to listen to my funny speeches. And if you impose model code of conduct and sanitize such speeches, that will defeat the purpose. And sometimes it is going too soft. For example, when speeches are made which are hate speeches, which polarize the communities, the Election Commission of India is not registering the FIR. Now you will say, sir, how FIR can be registered when model code of conduct does not have a statutory backing? But if you are promoting enmity amongst different sections of communities in India, that is basically the violation of model code of conduct, and at the same time, it is the violation of Indian Penal Code. So there are some provisions in model code of conduct which are also offences under other laws. For example, Representation of the People Act, for example, Indian Penal Code, so on and so forth. That is why former Chief Election Commissioner N. Gopalaswamy, he said, and he borrowed from Sanskrit, Vajradapi Katorani, Mruduni Kusumadapi. That means Election Commission should be as soft as petal and as hard as steel sometimes in implementing this model code of conduct. If I need to summarize, what is this topic all about and what is this editorial all about? Some misogynist comments made by politicians, one Congress politician, one BJP politician. So both the political parties have an equal share in making misogynist comments. Now a notice has been issued to them asking for their reply, for their response, because they have violated model code of conduct. And what is this model code of conduct? The real purpose of model code of conduct is to ensure a level playing field. In its current form, this model code of conduct has been implemented since 1991. Although this was the initiative taken by political parties in Kerala in 1960, then Kerala, Karnataka and West Bengal, they also started taking initiatives. But at the same time, 1979 elections was when this model code of conduct was implemented at the behest of political parties. So it is thanks to political parties, they have voluntarily decided to come together and abide by this code. And under this code, there are strict guidelines for political parties in power that you can't announce new policies, new schemes, you can't issue advertisements at the cost of the public exchequer, you can't make appointments to various bodies, you can't be withdrawing money from discretionary grants and giving it to the public. And similarly, there are provisions for general conduct. If you have to criticize each other's policies and programs, but don't call each other names, denigrate each other. Similarly, you can't use mosques, temples, churches, religious places for campaigning in these elections. That is a violation of model code of conduct. You can't disrupt each other's rallies and programs. That is violation of model code of conduct. But sometimes Election Commission has been too hard, sometimes too soft in implementing this model code of conduct. And what N. Gopalaswamy, former Chief Election Commissioner, argued, he said it has to be a mix, sometimes too hard, sometimes too soft. But when it comes to speeches, those speeches which border on hate speech, which polarize communities, which are defamatory in nature, should not be allowed to continue. But N. Gopalaswamy writes that if somebody is calling a political leader Feku and that political leader responds by Pappu, this is basically the gift of the gab. Political leaders, they may want to pepper their speeches with some words which will entice people to come to these political rallies. We should not be using model code of conduct to ban or sanitize such speeches. But what we must do is to ban hate speeches, speeches which violate the dignity of the woman, which are derogatory against the dignity of the woman. Himachal Pradesh, from which Ms. Kangana Ranaut is contesting elections, it has only one female MP. Women's Reservation Bill was passed by the Parliament. Constitution has been amended to provide for 33% reservation in Lok Sabha and legislative assemblies. But when that is going to be implemented, we don't know. Why? Because for that we first need census, then we need delimitation. That can happen only after 2029. In fact, there was a petition filed in the court as well that we should prepone the implementation of women's reservation law. But the court did not agree to interfere in this matter. At a time when there are speeches against women, there was a time when one political leader called a partner of another political opponent as 50 crore girlfriend, where one leader called somebody as Jersey cow. We have seen and we have had histories of speeches which are misogynist in nature against the dignity of the woman. And that too at a time when we have a women's reservation law, but that has not been implemented, what we need women to support each other rather than denigrate each other. So the biggest problem from this speech is a woman denigrating another woman, where these women should be supporting each other. That is what you need to understand from this article and this editorial. Let's look at another important topic from page number 1 of today's international edition of the Hindu newspaper. The year was 2019 when Citizenship Amendment Act was passed by the Parliament, under which if you are from Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and if you belong to 6 religious minorities of these countries, Hindus, Christians, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains, Parsis, and if you have entered India on or before December 31, 2014, you will not be deemed as illegal migrants, because illegal migrants in India are not eligible for citizenship. But these communities, if they have entered India on or before December 31, 2014, they shall not be deemed as illegal migrants. When they are not deemed as illegal migrants, that means they are eligible for citizenship. Under what ground? Under the ground of naturalization. But this law could not be implemented for many years. Why? Because the rules were not enacted by the government. Rules? How can the central government know for sure that you have entered India on or before December 31, 2014? How can the central government be satisfied that you come from Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh? How can the central government be satisfied that you belong to these 6 religious minorities? For that, rules were to be made. And these rules were made this year. Rules such as, you can apply for Indian citizenship now without having a need to produce a passport or a visa. For example, if somebody wants to apply for Indian citizenship through naturalization, you have to show that you have a valid passport of your country, that you have a valid visa of India, which has allowed you to stay in India, because illegal migrants are not eligible for citizenship. But under CAA, you don't need the passport or valid visa from India to claim Indian citizenship. Any document which can prove that either you or your parents or your grandparents or your great-grandparents were from Pakistan, Afghanistan and Bangladesh, that is sufficient enough to prove that you are from these 3 countries. These documents can be birth certificate. If you can show your birth certificate or an educational certificate, if you can show any license, any land record, which can prove that you are from Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, you are eligible for citizenship. Or if you can show any document which can prove that your parent, your grandparent, your great-grandparent were the citizens of these 3 countries, you are eligible for citizenship. That document will be treated as a proof. But how can we prove that you are eligible for a citizenship under naturalization? Because one ground on the basis of which you are eligible to apply for Indian citizenship through naturalization is that you should be well versed in any language mentioned in the 8th schedule of the Constitution. How was this proven? Somebody applying for Indian citizenship through naturalization had to also produce a college certificate or a school certificate where one subject should have been any language mentioned in the 8th schedule, so that the central government can know that you are well versed in any Indian language mentioned in the 8th schedule because you have studied that subject in your college, in your university, in your school. But that rule, that norm, that requirement has been softened for those migrants coming from Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh under CAA 2019. Now, even if you give a declaration, your own declaration, that you can speak in any language mentioned in the 8th schedule, that is enough. You don't have to produce any college or school or university certificate to prove that you are well versed in any language mentioned in the 8th schedule. Your own declaration that you can speak this language is more than enough. But how can the central government know and be satisfied that you have entered before 31st December 2014? Maybe you have a valid visa, maybe. Maybe you have been given an Aadhaar, because Aadhaar is not a proof of citizenship. Aadhaar is a proof of identity. And any usual resident of India is eligible for Aadhaar. That means even a foreigner who has stayed in India for 6 months is eligible for Aadhaar. So this migrant can have an Aadhaar. This migrant can have a census slip. For example, when the census exercise is carried out, the first stage of the census is house listing, where these census enumerators, they go house to house and they ask questions such as, have you been staying at this place for 6 months? Are you going to stay in this place for 6 more months? And then a slip is issued. If you have that slip, if you have a PAN card, if you have any document which can show that you have been in India prior to December 31, 2014, you are eligible for citizenship. And citizenship is under union list. Previously, this job of granting citizenship or formalizing the citizenship requirements, this was entrusted to district collectors. But district collectors are under the influence, under the supervision of the state governments. There have been some state governments which are reluctant to implement this law for a variety of reasons. States such as West Bengal, Kerala and others. And now to bypass them, the central government has said, instead of district collector, now a district level committee will be instituted. By whom? By the central government. And all these applications for citizenship under CAA will be taken electronically. And then all these applications will be screened by an empowered committee which would be instituted by the central government. But we have proven that we have entered India before December 31, 2014, that we are from Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh. But how can we prove that we are Hindus, Christians, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains, Parsis, the 6 religious minorities who are eligible for citizenship under CAA? For that, now the newspaper says, the priest can issue the certificate. Whether it is on blank paper or is it on judicial paper, any priest can issue a certificate saying, yes, you are a Hindu, you are a Christian, you are a Sikh, you are a Buddhist, you are a Jain, you are a Parsi, which means this certificate issued by the priest would be more than enough to satisfy the central government that you belong to these six religious minorities from 3 countries and you're eligible for citizenship. That is what you need to understand from this topic number 2. Now let's look at third important topic. Bail condition limiting political involvement violates rights, says the Supreme Court. In late 1970s, Supreme Court said bail is a norm, jail is an exception. If I am at a flight risk, I am an accused in a particular case, but if I am released on bail, I might be flight risk. That means I might run away from this country. If I can tamper with the evidence, if I can threaten the witness, in these conditions, I should be in jail. Otherwise, I should be released on bail, because bail is the norm, jail is the exception. If I'm an accused in a particular case, but I can threaten the witness, I can tamper the evidence, I am at a flight risk, then don't release me on bail, keep me in jail. Otherwise, release me on bail. But then there are conditions imposed by the courts while granting you bail. Conditions such as, there was a molester who molested a girl. Now this molester applied for bail. The court granted him bail. But do you know on what condition? that you allow that woman you molested to tie Rakhi on you. There was another bail condition in another case. Somebody was accused of sedition, and he was told that one of the bail condition is that you should not spend time on the social media. In another case, bail condition was that every evening you should hoist the national flag. So bail conditions are imposed, and some of these bail conditions are unreasonable. One such bail condition was that there was a political leader, a former mayor of a place in Odisha, who was released on bail, but with the condition that you should not participate in political activities. He approached the court that I am a political personality. I am a former mayor of Berhampur, and I want to participate in the 2024 elections. Not as a candidate, but I want to campaign in the elections. This would limit my political rights if the bail condition is that you should not participate in any political activity. Now a Supreme Court bench headed by Justice Gavai, what Justice Gavai has said, that such bail conditions which limit the political involvement, it violates the rights of the citizens, and such bail conditions should not be imposed. That is what you need to understand from this topic. Let's look at another important lead article, the politics of humanitarian aid. October 7 last year, Hamas crossed the Gaza-Israeli border, killed hundreds of Israeli citizens, which included women, children, elderly, and took more than 250 as hostages. Israel, on the other hand, waged and launched a war on Hamas in Gaza. And this led to the full-fledged crackdown on the Hamas. And ultimately, there are people who claim that Israel is doing and practicing something called genocide in Gaza. What is this genocide? According to Genocide Convention, if there is a country or if there is a group which is performing any of these 5 acts with the intention that you want to destroy either completely or partially, destroy whom? Destroy a group, which can be a national group, which can be an ethnic group, which can be a religious group, which can be a racial group. And which are these 5 acts? If you kill members of that group, if you cause bodily harm or mental harm to the members of these groups, if you're deliberately inflicting on this group, what? Conditions that will bring about physical destruction. For example, you are blocking food supplies to that group that will lead to their destruction. That is genocide. Similarly, if you are imposing measures which prevent births within the group, for example, the allegation against Israel that it is attacking the hospitals in Gaza, which means you are preventing births. And at the same time, if you are forcibly transferring children of this group to another group, all this amounts to genocide. And the allegation against Israel is that you are committing genocide. A case in International Court of Justice has already been filed by countries such as South Africa against Israel. And there have been calls that there should be ceasefire. At least during the holy month of Ramzan. Because the holy month of Ramzan is ongoing, there are Western countries, there are other countries, international organizations, which are trying to persuade Israel that you should announce a ceasefire during this month. And then we should talk and come on the negotiating table and discuss. Discuss what? Hamas should also free all the hostages. Some of the hostages have been freed, but not all the hostages. But now, if in Hamas, if in Gaza, if in West Bank and other parts of Palestine, if there is a humanitarian crisis, we need food packets to be given, we need relief aid to be given to these territories. How do we do it? there is one organization, the only United Nations agency which is responsible for delivering humanitarian aid to the refugees of Palestine. And these refugees of Palestine may be where? Maybe in Gaza, maybe in West Bank, maybe in East Jerusalem, maybe in Lebanon, maybe in Jordan, maybe in Syria. Because when bombs are falling from the sky, there are people who will migrate to other areas, and they are the refugees. And there is one organization which is responsible for providing humanitarian aid to these Palestinian refugees in these areas, and that is United Nations Relief and Works Agency. But United States has stopped funding this agency. Western countries also started defunding this agency, stopped funding this agency. Why? Because Israel alleged that some members of this agency were responsible for that October 7 attack on Israel. In fact, United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken, he says that worst violations are being perpetrated in Gaza. He says for the first time ever that 100% population in Gaza is at the risk of intense food insecurity. Yet what US Congress, US Parliament did, it blocked funds to this agency. European countries, which had also started defunding this agency, they have now realized that maybe Israel was not right in its accusation that some members of this agency were responsible for the October 7 attack. But do you know what all of this would do? If you stop funding this agency, which means you want to stop recognizing these Palestinian refugees in these territories, that's exactly what Israel wanted. What is that Israel wanted? There is a long pending solution to this Israel-Palestine conflict. That is, create separate state for Palestine, which can coexist along with Israel. So that Israeli state can also exist, Palestinian state can also exist. But there is a question mark on these Palestinian refugees. Refugees who have left Palestine to other areas such as Jordan, such as Syria, such as Lebanon. Israel does not want these people to come back. Palestine wants these refugees to come back because that is their area. And if you are defunding this agency, which is the only agency which is responsible for providing humanitarian aid to these refugees, which means you're basically de-recognizing them. That's exactly what Israel wanted. Now, United States, it has decided to send humanitarian aid in the form of food to these Palestinians who are in West Bank, who are in Gaza, for example. And United States and Israel, they're very close to each other. Any United Nations resolution is either vetoed by US on Israel or abstained by US on Israel. In fact, if it was not for United States, Israel would not have existed as an independent country, would not have existed as a state. Such is the level of support given to Israel by United States. All United States had to ask Israel that do not block this humanitarian aid. What I'm going to do, I'm going to cross the Egypt border and I will go where? I will come from Rafah. I will cross the border from Egypt and I will give humanitarian aid through road to the Palestinians. It did not ask Israel to do this. Instead, it started airdropping humanitarian aid. And then when the Palestinians started rushing to capture that humanitarian aid, hundreds of them were also killed. That is what this column talks about, the politics of humanitarian aid. The author also talks about some other instances. For example, in India, the DMK, a political party in Tamil Nadu, a regional political party in Tamil Nadu, started dispatching food items to the Tamils in Sri Lanka way back in 2008. And the Indian government, because at the central government level, DMK was a coalition partner of the Congress government at the center. The central government then requested International Red Cross that you should deliver these packets, food packets, to the Tamils. And then when there was an economic crisis in Sri Lanka, again the DMK government started sending relief packets to the Tamils, to the Sri Lankans in Sri Lanka. Politics in the guise of humanitarian aid, according to this author, not me. Similarly, there was a campaign by United States, Western countries, that we should dethrone Bashar al-Assad, who is the leader of Syria. But when that did not happen, there are some areas in Syria which are under the control of anti-Assad forces. And now humanitarian aid, if it is given, it is restricted to those areas which are against Bashar al-Assad. So that is what this editorial, this column talks about. Around the world, people wait patiently for food and medicine amid fights and leaders paying scant regard to their fate. This is the politics of humanitarian aid, according to this column. Clear? Let's look at something else. Another editorial, timely restatement. We have a fundamental right under Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution, which is freedom of speech and expression. Freedom of press is not explicitly mentioned under the Constitution. But the Supreme Court has said freedom of speech and expression also includes freedom of press. But this freedom of speech and expression is not an absolute fundamental right. It comes under reasonable restrictions. Those reasonable restrictions are mentioned under Article 19, Clause 2. One such reasonable restriction is defamation. You can't exercise your freedom of speech and expression and in the process defame me, because I have the right to my reputation as well. What if, for example, there is a media house which publishes story against a business house? There is a media house, for example, Bloomberg. It published an article against Z Entertainment, against a business house. And now Z Entertainment, business house, claims that this story, this article is defamatory. And for that, Z Entertainment approached the courts, approached the High Court, for example, and asked for injunction. What is injunction? A judicial order restraining somebody from doing something. Now, what the order said, the order of the Delhi High Court said, in fact, the first order was given by Delhi Lower Court, then by the Delhi High Court, directing Bloomberg that you should take down this story because it appears to be defamatory against Z Entertainment. Take down this story within 1 week. So this was an injunction, a judicial order. Supreme Court said this is wrong. This should not have been done. Why? Because there is something called triple test. What is that triple test? There is long established principle according to a UK court judgment called Bonnard versus Perryman. According to this, can you direct an injunction, a judicial order, a restraint that this particular article or this defamatory content should be taken down? Only if prima facie it is a case of defamation. According to this judgment, Bonnard versus Perryman, it says injunction can be carried out only if the court feels that this content is really defamatory and you can't even justify it. Justify in the sense, I am defaming you, but that is in larger public interest. That's based on truth. I'm calling you thief. I'm calling you corrupt. That is defamatory, but it is also truth. And it is also in public interest because people should know that you are a candidate contesting election. You have amassed huge wealth beyond your known sources of income. Although it may be defamatory, but I'm doing this in larger public interest. This is allowed. There is triple test that needs to be performed when such an injunction is ordered. What is that triple test? Number one, prima facie, it should be the case of defamation, which means if the article has been written by Bloomberg against Z, when the court will look at this article, prima facie, at the face of it, the case can be made that yes, this indeed is a defamatory article. Then injunction can be issued. Test number two, it will cause irreparable loss or harm to the plaintiff. If the Z Entertainment is asking for injunction, saying this article should be taken down, and if we do not give that relief to this complainant, if we do not order Bloomberg to take down that article, irreparable damage could be done to Z. If yes, then that article can be taken down. Or third, something called balance of convenience. Balance of convenience. The court will look into, if we give the relief to the complainant, what impact it will have on the complainant, what good things will happen to the complainant because of this order, and how bad it will affect Bloomberg. If we ask Bloomberg to take down that article, we have to balance the two. And only then injunction can be issued. The court said, this particular case of Z Entertainment versus Bloomberg, this has not satisfied this triple test, and ultimately, the Supreme Court has cautioned the courts that you should use this power, because after all, it's the discretion of the court to order, to give a judicial order restraining somebody from publishing a story or asking that entity to take down that story or an article. This is at the discretion of the court, and the Supreme Court has cautioned the courts from exercising this discretion arbitrarily. The court has further said that at least such orders should not be issued ex parte. That means without hearing the other side, because that is also the violation of the principles of natural justice. You can't take a decision ex parte without hearing the other side. Nobody shall be prosecuted without being heard. And at the same time, the courts have cautioned that there is something called SLAP. What is SLAP? Strategic litigation against public participation. What is that? Imagine, I am writing an article against this business activity, which is X, business entity, which is X. And what X is doing, it is manufacturing an item at a factory. And I believe that that item is carcinogenic, cancer-causing agent. I am publishing an article. This business entity can file a lawsuit against me, a strategic lawsuit. Why? To silence me. Using courts, the courts will direct me that you have to take down this article. What will happen because of this? This powerful entity filing a case against me, trying to silence me, it basically affects the people's right to know that this company is manufacturing something which is carcinogenic, which is cancer causing. And that is exactly what will happen because of this injunction. If you give this injunction ex parte without following the triple test, ultimately what will happen? It will empower top business entities to use SLAP, to slap public, and the public's right to know would get defeated. That is why Supreme Court makes a case against pre-trial restraint on journalistic content. What is this pre-trial? Because the court did not yet decide whether this article written by Bloomberg is defamatory or not. The trial is still ongoing. Once the trial is complete, and if it is found that indeed that content is defamatory, they have to take it down. At best, you can seek civil damages. That means you can seek compensation from Bloomberg because it has violated and destroyed your reputation. But in a case where civil damages are sought, where compensation is sought, not criminal jail term, in such cases, at the trial itself or pre-trial, even before the trial has started, if you grant such injunctions that would violate the citizen's right to know, that will also be detrimental. That is what you need to understand from this editorial timely restatement. Clear? Let's look at another column. Why are Rohingyas, refugees, risking their lives at sea? Who are these Rohingyas? They used to reside at the Rakhine province in Myanmar. Predominantly Muslim, but some of them are Hindus as well. So it's basically an ethnic group rather than a religious group. But what is citizenship? I owe my allegiance to India. But Indian state should legally accept me as part of India, as a citizen of India. So it's a two-way street. I owe my allegiance to India and the Indian state accepts me as its political member. These Rohingyas, they claim that we are the citizens of Myanmar, but the Myanmar state does not recognize them as citizens. And since 1982, the state of Myanmar has been denying them citizenship, which basically means they are rendered stateless. When they are rendered stateless, the year was 2017, when massive violence broke out between the majority Buddhists and the minority Rohingyas, which forced these Rohingyas to move out of Myanmar. Some of them are in camps and some of them are taking sea route or opting for sea travel to go to other countries, such as Indonesia, such as Malaysia. For this, what we need to understand is that there is a United Nations Convention on the status of refugees. (1951). And then there is an additional protocol of 1967. What is the combined effect of this convention and the additional protocol of 1967? This convention basically focused on refugees who are European refugees and who have become refugees because of the Second World War. So when Second World War broke out, there was massive migration of the people, refugees. The target, the purpose of this convention was to focus on European refugees who have become refugees, who have migrated prior to 1st January 1951. So there was a time limit prior to 1st January 1951. Geographical limit, only European refugees. But then this additional protocol, which was signed in 1967, it removed that geographical limitation, it removed that time limitation as well. Now this protocol applies to any refugee, any part of the country, any part of the world, even after 1951. But India has not ratified this convention. It has not signed this convention. Pandit Nehru was the Prime Minister. He made a conscious choice, saying our borders are very porous. And since this convention spoke of European refugees, not about Indian refugees, we will not abide by this convention. But one important thing about this convention is a principle of non-refoulement. What is this principle of non-refoulement? Listen to me carefully. if I am from a country, if I am a country X, and I am a signatory, I have ratified this convention as well as the protocol. And if I see Rohingyas entering my country, the principle of non-refoulement says I cannot force these Rohingyas to go back to the country where their life is in danger. That is what we call principle of non-refoulement. I'll repeat. India has not signed or ratified this convention nor this additional protocol of 1967. But if there is a country which has, and there are hundreds of countries which have signed and ratified this convention and the additional protocol of 1967, if there is a country which has ratified this convention and Rohingyas, they start entering these countries, this country cannot send these Rohingyas back to a country, back to a territory, back to a land where their life is in danger. That means when Rohingyas enter those countries which are signatories, which have ratified this convention, they cannot be sent back to Myanmar because in Myanmar their life is in danger. That is what you need to understand from the principle of non-refoulement. Is that clear? Let's look at some of the prelims focused topics. Topic number 1, MDMK loses top symbol. Now what is this top symbol? Political parties, if they want benefits from Election Commission of India, they have to register with the Election Commission of India. And all those political parties which are registered with the Election Commission of India, we call them registered political parties. But over a period of time, some of these registered political parties, they can be recognized. Recognized as what? National political party, state political party. Now, for example, you are recognized as a state political party, which means you can use your symbol, election symbol. Your candidates contesting elections in that state where you are recognized as a state political party, all your candidates can use the same common symbol. That's the benefit. But you have to satisfy some conditions in order to become a state political party. And once you don't satisfy those conditions, you don't meet those requirements, which means you can be de-recognized as well. Who has the power to recognize political party as state or national political party? Election Commission of India. Under what rules? There are rules called Symbols Order of 1968. Clear? And according to these rules, if you are recognized as a state political party, you can use the symbol to contest the elections in that state, and all your candidates can use the same symbol. And that is how MDMK had this top symbol, because it was a recognized state political party. But then in 2010, it failed to satisfy the requirements of a state political party, and as such, it was de-recognized. When it was de-recognized, and now if MDMK wants to contest election again, will their candidates get this top symbol again? Or will they have to choose another symbol? That's the key question. This is where if tomorrow I registered my political party, I will be given a list of symbols. That these are the free symbols. You take any symbol. If it is satisfactory to us, we will allot that symbol to you. Take any symbol out of this list of free symbols. This top symbol, because MDMK was now in 2010 de-recognized as a state political party, so you lost this exclusive power to use this top symbol. Can MDMK use this top symbol again? Yes. For that, there are rules. 10BB clause 1 under the symbols order, where if you are de-recognized 6 years ago, you can still retain the exclusive use of your symbol, provided in Lok Sabha elections, you contest 2 seats. Lok Sabha election, you contest 2 seats. And if you're contesting Legislative Assembly election, you have to contest at least 5% of the seats. MDMK was a recognized political party. It was de-recognized more than 6 years ago. It had the symbol top. Can it use the same symbol again? Yes. If in Lok Sabha election it is contesting 2 seats. But MDMK was contesting only 1 seat. That is why it loses top symbol. And if it was a Legislative Assembly election, at least 5% seats it should have contested. This can be important topic for your prelims examination because it's the election season. You can expect questions on elections. Let's look at another topic. Home Minister Mr. Amit Shah says AFSPA could be revoked from Jammu and Kashmir. What is this Armed Forces Special Powers Act? This act was enacted in the year 1958 and it was particularly focused on Assam and Manipur. Manipur then was a union territory and there was an armed insurgency in Manipur. But what is this Armed Forces Special Powers Act? For example, if there is an unlawful assembly in a state, if there are protests in a state, if there is some unlawful activity going on, if there is terrorism going on, who tackles all these unlawful activities? Police, because the police is managing law and order. Law and order is under the state subject. But what are the ways by which the police responds or the CRPF responds? They will go for lathi charge. They will go for water cannons will be thrown. They can go for pepper bullets. They can fire in the air. They can shoot your leg. And the last resort is when nothing is working, they will shoot to kill. So police, paramilitary troops, they are trained in a different manner. You have to tackle the unlawful activities. You have to tackle the unregulated protest. How? Through various means. Through rubber bullets, through pellet guns, through water cannons, various sources. But army is not designed to operate in this fashion. Army knows only one thing: shoot to kill. So if you are bringing army into the civilian area, but the civilian area is disturbed, you have to give special powers to army. And what are these special powers? You can shoot to kill even if you suspect, even on mere suspicion, armed forces can kill somebody. You can arrest somebody without warrant. You can search a premise without a warrant. And if there is an accusation of human rights violation against this member of the armed forces, no action can be taken against him. He cannot be prosecuted without the permission of the central government, which means without the permission of the Defense Ministry. That's the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. Any commissioned officer, any non-commissioned officer can kill somebody on mere suspicion, can arrest somebody without a warrant, can search a premise without a warrant, can destroy a particular, let's say, go down of weapons without any due process. Because that is the special power given to army, because they are operating in disturbed areas, but these are disturbed civilian areas. Later on, this act was extended to Nagaland. This act was extended to Arunachal Pradesh as well. And later on, this act was extended to Jammu and Kashmir as well, because of the insurgency which broke out in the late 1980s in Jammu and Kashmir. one important thing that you must keep in mind is that first and the foremost requirement is a disturbed area. That means Armed Forces Special Powers Act can apply only in disturbed area. For that, you have to declare a particular area as disturbed. Either the entire state or a part of that state or a district of that state should be declared as a disturbed area. But who can declare a state or a part of that state as disturbed area? In case of Nagaland and Arunachal, it is the center, which means the central government. In case of Assam and Manipur, it is the state government, which basically means it is the governor of that state which declares that this state or any part of that state is a disturbed area. And once it is declared as a disturbed area, then AFSPA is applied in that disturbed area. Now, the Home Minister says, if the situation stabilizes, the security situation stabilizes in Jammu and Kashmir, we can revoke AFSPA from Jammu and Kashmir. Clear? Something else. Tiger Triumph, which is a bilateral exercise. Bilateral means between two countries. Which are these two countries? India and United States. But this is a bilateral tri-service exercise. Tri-service means the three services participate: Army, Navy, Air Force. And please remember, this is the first ever tri-service exercise between India and United States. Previously, there was a tri-service exercise between India and Russia. Now, the first tri-service exercise between India and United States is this Tiger Triumph, which started in 2019. And it started with an exercise in Visakhapatnam. And now again in Andhra Pradesh, the second edition of this Tiger Triumph is ongoing. And what is this exercise all about? It's aimed at developing interoperability. For example, in the oceans, there is a humanitarian crisis. For example, there is a pirate attack. There is a piracy attack. How the two countries and their armed forces, India and United States, will collaborate with each other for humanitarian exercise, for rescue operations, for relief operations, to bring that interoperability, to bring that element of camaraderie between the two armed forces of the two countries. That's the purpose of Tiger Triumph. So long story short, previously we used to have tri-service bilateral exercise with Russia. The first ever tri-service bilateral exercise between India and United States is Tiger Triumph. Tri-service, that means the three services participate: Air Force, Navy and the Army. And what is the purpose of this Tiger Triumph? It is to develop interoperability, to ensure that during humanitarian assistance or during disaster relief, how the two countries will cooperate with each other, how their agencies will cooperate with each other for the larger relief, and how can we develop and refine the standard operating procedures. That is what this Tiger Triumph is all about. Can be important for your prelims. Fourth important prelims-based topic. Now boys can learn Mohiniyattam at Kala Mandalam. What is this Mohiniyattam? It is a classical dance. It is a solo dance. Of which state? Kerala. It is argued that Lord Vishnu in order to take over the Asuras, Lord Vishnu took upon the guise of Mohini. So Mohiniyattam basically emerged from the temples of Kerala. And it is a solo dance. Solo dance in the sense, if you look at the body movements the facial expressions of the artist, they are mostly feminine in nature. And as such, this dance form is practiced by the females. If you look at Mohiniyattam, it is characterized by graceful, swaying body movements with no abrupt jerks or sudden leaps. So unlike the dance form of Prabhudeva or Hrithik Roshan, where there are abrupt jerks and leaps, Mohiniyattam is like graceful swaying body movements. For example, in Kerala, you will see coconut trees. So the way the coconut trees sway, in the same way you will see the body movements of the dancer who is practicing Mohiniyattam. And at the same time, there is a lot of emphasis on acting. So Mohiniyattam places a lot of emphasis on acting. But at the same time, if there is one person who is responsible for ensuring that Mohiniyattam survives, that person is the former Maharaja of Travancore, Swati Thirunal Maharaj, who played some of the very important decisions and steps were taken by the Maharaj to popularize Mohiniyattam and revive Mohiniyattam as well. That is what you need to understand from this topic. And now the boys can also learn Mohiniyattam at Kalamandalam. In a historic move, the Kerala Kalamandalam, which is a deemed university for arts and culture, it has opened the doors for boys also to practice this. A classical solo dance, but the facial expressions, the body forms that are used, all these expressions are feminine in character, feminine in nature. That is why it used to be performed only by the women. And we say this dance form also traces its origin to the temples of the Travancore or Kerala. Now let's look at another important topic relevant for prelims. Government notifies revised wages under MGNREGA. This law of 2005, which is Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, it's basically a demand-driven scheme. That means any rural household, if it demands work, 100 days of employment will be given to that household. But that is basically manual, unskilled labor. But for that, wages are to be provided. These wages, according to Section 6 of the MGNREGA Act, the central government can notify these wages. And the Ministry of Rural Development notifies wages every year with effect from 1st of April every year. But one question that I need to ask you, on what basis are these wages calculated or determined? Based on CPI-AL, Consumer Price Index for agricultural laborers. That is how these wages are determined. But what is the base year? For the CPI-ML, what is the base year for this CPI-ML on which it is calculated? (1986-87). Although there was a talk few years ago that we should change the base year from 86-87 to 2019-2020, but that has not happened. So, government has notified revised wages under the MGNREGA Act of 2005. It's a demand-driven scheme. Any rural household which demands work can be given 100 days of employment, manual unskilled labor, for which wages are to be provided. According to the law, the wages shall be determined by the central government. And the Ministry of Rural Development every year releases the wages. And when we look at the wages, it is based on the CPI-AL, And that is why it varies from state to state. And according to this article, the highest, best wages continues to be the state of Haryana, and one of the lowest wages, Uttar Pradesh. Clear? Now let's look at another topic. Study unravels the recipe that gives Kashmiri rice variety a unique aroma. There is a Kashmiri rice variety known as Mushk Buduj. It is known for its rich aroma. It is known for its unique taste. Now the researchers have found out what is the reason for its rich aroma, a unique taste. For example, it's very expensive as well, and that is why it is used only for special occasions. For example, when the groom goes to the bride's family at the time of the wedding, this mushk buduj is cooked. It's a very rich rice which has rich aroma, flavor, rich taste. And other researchers have said it is because of the altitude and it is because of the temperature that we see mushk buduj has rich aroma and rich taste. In fact, this variety of rice, it had almost become extinct until it was revived by a university in 2007 called SQUAST, Sher-e-Kashmir University of Agricultural Sciences and Technology. A revival of Mushk Buduj program started in the year 2007, and what had almost caused the extinction of this variety of rice? Basically, it had low yield, which made it unprofitable. But there was also blast disease which would affect this mushk buduj. And that is something which is mentioned somewhere in the article. I'm unable to locate it. Rice blast disease, it was the reason why this variety of rice had almost become extinct. And this rice blast disease was for the first time noted in the California rice in 1996. But then because of the steps taken by SQUAST, this variety of rice has now been revived. And in fact, in 2023, it was given a geographical tag as well, wherein any product, which can be a handicraft product, which can be a food stuff, if it traces its origin to a geographical place and it has the characteristics which are because of that origin, that is given a GI tag. And now in last year, GI tag was also given to this variety. Clear? Let's look at another prelims-based topic. CCI conducting probe against some fintech entities, says the chairperson, Ms. Ravneet Kaur. What is Competition Commission of India? It's basically a statutory body under the Competition Act of 2002. It's a statutory body. What is the role? The role is to prohibit anti-competitive agreements, abuse of dominant position by enterprises, regulate combinations, for example, acquisitions, mergers and acquisitions. All of this are to be regulated approved by by Competition Commission of India. Because it is to ensure that competition survives in India. What is competition? For example, telecom industry. If you're not satisfied with the data rates provided by your telecom provider or the services provided by your telecom provider, what is the option that you have? You can shift to another telecom operator. But if your telecom operator is acquiring all the other telecom operators one by one, so that this telecom operator creates a sort of monopoly in the system, which basically goes against the interest of the consumer. Because now consumer will be left with no choice. There has to be healthy competition. If there is healthy competition, that means there will be focus on innovation. Otherwise, the companies will stop innovating because they have a dominant position in the market. They have a monopoly in the market. And it is the job of this Competition Commission of India to either approve those mergers or disapprove those mergers which are likely to have adverse impact on competition. And now, according to this article, the Competition Commission of India is investigating, conducting probe against some fintech entities, because they say that the way they are leveraging technology, it is abusing the position. But it did not elaborate further. What exactly do you mean by abusing that position? So we will have to wait and watch. But the point is, you need to understand what is this Competition Commission of India. It consists of a chairperson and 6 members who are appointed by the central government. And the duty of the commission is to eliminate practices which have adverse effect on competition. It has to promote and sustain competition, because after all, if you promote and sustain competition, you are doing something in the interest of the consumers. You're protecting the interest of the consumers. And it is the job of this commission to ensure freedom of trade in the markets of India. Please memorize these 4 points, because sometimes UPSC will directly ask you a question listing these points. So you have to tell exactly which of these are the duties performed by the Competition Commission of India. Clear? But something else. Last year, Competition Commission was headless and quorumless. Headless in the sense it had no chairperson. The chairperson who was there, his term got over. The new chairperson was not appointed because there has to be a chairperson and 6 members. So for many months, Competition Commission of India last year was headless. It was quorumless as well. Quorumless in the sense it should have minimum 3 members who should participate in the meeting, then they can take a decision. But at that time, it had only 2 members. How can a Competition Commission of India, or for that matter any body, which does not have quorum, take a decision? In that case, there is a doctrine called doctrine of necessity. What is this doctrine of necessity? The year was 2019. Delhi High Court was hearing a case. The case was Mylan Laboratories, and the issue was whether Intellectual Property Appellate Board, according to the law, this Intellectual Property Appellate Board should have a judicial member, should have a technical member as well. But then there was no technical member appointed. Can, without a technical member, this Intellectual Property Appellate Board take any decision? In that case, the court invoked doctrine of necessity, saying it is necessary in this case for this appellate board to take a decision, even in absence of a technical member. And the same was applied to Competition Commission of India at that time. Even if it was headless, it was quorumless, but it could have invoked this doctrine of necessity. Even without requisite numbers, it could have still functioned, even if it does not, even if it lacked quorum, even if it was headless. These were the 14 topics that we discussed in today's analysis of the Hindu newspaper. Now there are 2 practice questions for your mains examination. Please write answers to these questions and submit to us. We will be glad to evaluate. You can even write answers to these questions in the comment section so that other students, other competitors are also evaluating your answers. So you can evaluate each other's answers, and that's how you can boost the morale of each other. Comment on the need to grant a statutory backing to the Model Code of Conduct. Because I told you, Model Code of Conduct does not have a statutory backing. And for a long time, Election Commission of India was asking for statutory backing, saying let's have a law which can back Model Code of Conduct. But now it has decided against it, saying if Model Code of Conduct has a statutory backing, then the power to implement this will go to the courts. And it's a slow poison. The way the courts are functioning, they will take decisions which may be after the culmination of the elections. So we don't need a statutory backing. So whether you need or you don't need, that's something that you have to mention as an answer to question number 1. Question number 2, preventing genocide, war crimes, ethnic cleansing, and crimes against humanity is an ongoing process that requires sustained effort. Comment on the need to enact an anti-genocide law in India. Although India is a signatory to the Genocide Convention, but it has not passed any law against genocide in India. In fact, there is no law against the custodial torture either. So, preventing genocide, war crimes, it is an effort. It's an ongoing effort. But is there a need and a measure to enact an anti-genocide law in India? Write answers to these questions in 250 words. And if you have enjoyed, understood, most importantly, understood today's lecture, press the like button. Do share in your comments in the comment section below. And see you on Saturday in that workshop, which is specifically focused on the working professionals. Thank you so much for staying with me. Morning. Goodbye. Take care.